Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. Today we're checking out the Razer Tomahawk. This is the ATX version, and it's really for people who want to build a fully Razer branded build. And with the new ASRock Razer Edition motherboards, this makes the perfect combination. But is it any good? Let's find out. As usual with these videos, we build with hardware that we've got on hand. We don't go out and buy extra hardware for these builds, but what we're gonna do is the usual thing, is we're gonna thermally test it. We're gonna show you absolutely everything on this case and everything to do with this case. So let's get stuck into it and see what it's all about. First things first, let's start off with removing the panels. They've actually made this quite easy to understand. Push here to open, it's a magnetic door. So you push it in, and then you can swing the door open off the hinge. Now this is actually slightly different to the design that they showed at CES at the start of the year. So basically what you do is you do that and then you lift the panel off the hinge. Well, you can see that the hinge will just freely swing. I actually kind of like this. This is nice. This is very nice. I like this. All right, let's flip it around. Let's do this one more time, right? Push it in. Flips open, lift up the glass, and away we go. Before we go on, I thought this video was going to go a completely different way, I'm going to be honest with you, but I just realized something about this case, and it took me literally taking off the glass panels to realize this. This case is the Lian-Li Lancool 2. Every single thing about this is Lian-Li Lancool 2. So for me to go through the feature set of the stuff of this case that is individual to Razer, it would literally be the built-in RGB controller, the magnetic hinge doors, and that's about it, because it is legitimately a Lancool 2. And the reason why I know this, I daily drive a Lancool 2 and this is exactly the same. This panel's the same, this panel's the same. The front bracket for mounting the radiator is also exactly the same. The hard drive cage is exactly the same. The reason why I thought this case was heavier than it should be is because Lian-Li Lancool 2s are also a heavy case. The cutouts on the back of the case looked so familiar and I couldn't figure it out, but this case is just a Lian-Li Lancool 2 with a Razer front panel and some magnetic hinges. That's basically all I've got to say about it, which kind of makes this video a little bit easier to do for me because we know all the characteristics of the Lancool 2 and the Lancool 2 mesh in terms of what you can fit in it. In fact, I'm even pretty sure you can use the Lian-Li accessories in this case because they haven't changed anything internally. Guys, when I say this is the Lancool 2, I mean this is quite literally the Lancool 2. Look, here's the Lancool 2's hot swappable backplate for SATA drives, right? Look, I'm gonna swap the backplate. I've never done this. I haven't even attempted to do this with this case yet, but this is how confident I am that this is a Lancool 2. You ready, guys? Check this out. The exact same cutout holes on this backplane. You know what? I'm actually gonna put all of them in just to really show you guys this. It's the first Razer Tomahawk with a hot swappable drive bay. Look at that. This is the Lancool 2 hot swappable backplane. All right? In the Razer Tomahawk. This is a Lancool 2. Okay, let me show you what makes this different to the Lancool 2. I think I've made my point here. Behind this panel is the RGB controller for the Underglow kit that's built into this case. If I pull off this panel, it's gonna reveal a little bit more, but yeah, that's basically it. It's the main thing that makes this different is it's got this little RGB controller that works with Razer Synapse, and it's got a ribbon cable that runs down to the bottom of the case. This Underglow kit, which you will be seeing in the video, don't worry, we're not gonna like not do a build in it just because we know the truth of this case. The Lancool 2 is still an excellent case. So much so that it's a case that I daily drive. So I don't hate it, I just think this is very, very lazy on Razer's behalf. And the reason why I say this is lazy is because the Lancool 2 is a relatively cheap case, and the Tomahawk, which is quite literally the exact same case, is a very expensive case. You are paying for the Razer branding on this case. So, you know, like I honestly thought this was going to go a different way. I'm not going to lie. But the fact that we know so much about the Lancool 2, and the Lancool 2 is a fantastic case, for that alone, that makes this, by proxy, a good case, except for the pricing. And also, we don't know what the airflow is like yet. And from my guesses, it's going to be worse than the Lancool 2. The other main difference with this case, obviously I spoke about this when I talked about the RGB controller, is this underglow kit that is built into the case. So yeah, that's basically it. A bunch of Razer logos pressed into the metal. The actual chassis itself is exactly the same as the Lancool 2. We showed that the Lancool 2's backplane actually fits on the hard drive cage as well. There's a Razer serial number and that kind of stuff on the bottom of the case. All right, here's what we're gonna do. I already said this, but save yourself some time. Go watch our Lancool 2 coverage so you can find out about how this all fits. You can find out about the Lancool 2's thermals as well. We're going to be thermally testing this as well because it will be quite different to the Lancool 2, given that front panel that this has got is completely different. So, I mean, that's basically it for me talking about the case. I think it's time to build. So let's get into it.
'Cause what I see is you, what I see is you. 'Cause what I see is you, what I see is you. 'Cause what I see is you, what I see is you. 'Cause what I see is you, what I see is you. 'Cause what I see is you, what I see is you.
Alright ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the build in the Lian-Li, Razer Tomahawk. I'm kidding. I actually, after building in this, I actually liked the case because the truth is, I already liked the Lancool 2 and the building experience is identical. The major difference that I found with this case is the thermals. So let's check out those thermals. Now what you're seeing on screen is this case has next to no airflow. It gets very, very hot. And you can see the differences in the temperature with all the panels off and everything closed up. It is an absolute huge difference. So yeah. And the reason why I mounted the front fans the way that I did is it actually gives it more of an opportunity to pull fresh air in, because the way that the bracket ships in the case would actually put the fans straight up against that solid panel. But if you flip the bracket over, it actually allows it to draw air in, and it's only a very small amount of air. So yeah, that's the conclusion with the thermals. It's not as good as the Lancool 2, not even close. Anyways, let's chat about the parts because that's everyone's favorite part. The motherboard is the ASRock B550 Taichi Razer Edition. We actually covered this motherboard already. You can check that out in the top right hand corner if you want to do that at your own leisure, but just stick around because we've got a bit more to talk about. The CPU is the AMD Ryzen 9 5900X. I picked the 5900X because it's not the 5950X and I wanted to use this cooler, and yeah, we're getting a bit on the edge of that cooling with the 5950X. We went with the NZXT Kraken Z53. It's the 240mm version of the coolers with the display on them. This is a brand new cooler, just released a couple weeks ago, and we've used it a couple times. I just want to dispel any confusion that people had. This is the Z53, and some comments that we got last week saying in another build that we did it was the Z63, but no, it was the 53 in that white build that we did with the 3060 Ti the other day. For RAM, we went with the classic. We went with the Antec Katana RAM. I really, really like this RAM. I love the way it looks. It diffuses color better than any other RAM that we use, which is why I find myself using it for these builds that have this aesthetic, and it just looks really nice, and that's basically why I used it. Now that big chunky GPU is a new one. It is the ASRock 6800 XT Taichi X16G. That's a really long name. But we will be having a video when we're going to be benchmarking it with Windows and Linux coming up really soon. This is the first time we've used it. It only arrived yesterday, so I wanted to chuck it in this build because it already uses a Taichi board and I thought it would match. So that's why I ended up going with it before we put out a benchmarking video. But it is coming next week, so stay tuned for that. And while we're on that topic as well with the GPU, we always get questions about this GPU support bracket that we use. This one is an Aorus one, and it comes with the 2080 Ti and the 2080 that came out, but I think they're actually re-releasing these, so you might be able to buy them separately. So yeah, they're actually one of my favorite GPU support brackets because they don't take up any PCIe slots on the back and they just hold it up on the end, so it's actually quite good. I know we're going to get lots of questions about these fans. They are the Antec Prism fans. They're 120mm fans, and there are 6 in total. They're fully addressable RGB, and they're some of the cheapest ring style RGB fans you can buy, and they're pretty dang good, and we use them a lot in these builds, especially with green. It just diffuses light better than some of the other fans on the market, which is why I find myself using them for stuff like this. They just look good and the performance on them is pretty good as well. If I miss talking about any parts in this build, I'll put a PC part picker list down below in the description. You can peruse that list to see what everything is and see how much everything costs and all of that jazz. But all right, let's quickly chat about the Razer Tomahawk and the things that I noticed that make this slightly different to the Lian-Li Lancool 2. All joking aside, internally it is the same case, the chassis is the same, even this is the same, right? The cable management is exactly the same. Everything is the same. Front bracket's the same. It is literally a Lancool 2 with a different front panel. Even the front connector for the lighting on the front is the same as a Lancool 2 for a Lancool 2 panel. Now, I was going to try and fit a Lancool 2 panel on the front of this just for a laugh, which I'm going to do right now. So I'll be right back. All right, let's see if this works. I have a feeling this is going to work, all right? I've got a Lancool 2 panel. You know what? It's slightly different, but it does actually line up. So here's the Razer Tomahawk Lancool 2. Here's another thing I noticed with the Razer Tomahawk as well, and you've probably noticed it through the video with the color. Look at it, it's just changing by itself, even though the controller is set to green. Now, it only uses a single USB motherboard header to configure it in Synapse, but it just keeps dropping out and doing its own thing. So there's a bit of a weird stability issue, and I did test this a few other ways as well. I've got an adapter which converts that connector into a USB port as well, and it just keeps freaking out like that. So yeah, for a premium case, I think that it's still a little rough around the edges, to be absolutely honest. Maybe they will release a firmware update that will fix this, but this has been happening the entire time since configuring the lighting on this case. So doesn't make lots of sense, but it is what it is, right? So take that into consideration, that you might have intermittent color changing if you were to go for this case. Which brings me to the last thing. Don't buy this case. Don't buy it. It's too expensive for what it is, because if you're looking at a case that does everything this case does, internally, externally, I mean, minus the Underglow kit, which shouldn't cost what it does, I would go for the Lancool 2, because the Australian pricing, because that's where I am, the Australian pricing for this case is, hold your breath, you ready, Claire?
Yeah.
Hold your breath, 419 Australian dollars.
Whew.
Right? And guess how much the Lancool 2 is?
Not bad.
$169. And they're both the same case. So that's my conclusion. If you really, really, really like Razer and you really, really have to have this case because you're into that aesthetic, yeah, throw your money away and buy the case. Otherwise, buy the Lancool 2. Because for us here at Gear Seekers, the Lancool 2 was the best case of 2019, even to the point where I'm still using the Lancool 2 for my editing PC. Well, that is until next week when we do this crazy water-cooled build, but still I'm using the Lancool 2. It is legitimately that good because of the price as well. This is too expensive. And that's all I've got to say about it. Anyways, guys, sorry to be a bit of a downer, but if you like the music you heard here, I make all the music. If you hated the video, hit the dislike button twice. Tell us what you think about the Razer Tomahawk and anything that you've got considering its design and whatnot. I think it actually looks like a nice case. If it was about $100 cheaper, probably something I could recommend if you're going for that Razer aesthetic. Otherwise, it is just not worth it. The other thing I just wanted to add as well, I keep going on tangents with this because the Lancool 2 is such a good case that this just frustrates me that it costs so much and you're not getting that much. At CES at the start of the year, well in 2020, if you're watching this in 2020, the case was different. It had these gull wing panels and everything like that that came up, and this is what it turned into. So, I mean, yeah. It is what it is. I don't like to do these negative type of videos, but I gotta let you guys know because I went searching for people talking about this. There's a few little discussions about it maybe being a modified Lancool 2, but there's nothing really definitive with this case, so I thought that it was my YouTube duty to give you guys the bottom line. So yeah, and I would have compared this to a Lancool 2 if my editing PC wasn't being used with the Lancool 2 and I just didn't feel like unplugging all of that. That would have been a nightmare. Anyways, guys, like I said, music, you know how it goes. Yeah, I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peak, we seek. I'm a bit disappointed. I really did think this was going to be its own thing. But yeah, I know I'm banging on about it, but it had so much potential. I really liked the going panels with the gas struts. That's what it is, gas struts, like on your bonnet or your rear window on your car or whatnot. Man, that would have been so cool if they pulled that off. A bit sad about that, to be honest. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this video didn't drag out for too long. And I'm sorry that we did a third Lancool 2 video.